Keeping safety front of mind is all about communication. Welcome to the Farm Safety Roundup, a podcast series focused on important conversations to help keep farmers, their families, and their workers safe. Farm Safety Roundup is brought to you by the agricultural team at Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. With today's timely topic, I'm your host, Shaun Haney. Let's get to it. Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com. The Farm Safety Roundup is back with expertise to help you avoid harm on the farm. Material handling it is a term used to describe all the processes involved in the movement and storage of agricultural products. More commonly, like a lot of times we'd say, we're moving stuff. And as we get a little bit closer to spring, we are moving a lot of things around the farm. And, in the day-to-day of business, of farming, we move things a lot. And a lot of times we probably just do it intuitively, but don't necessarily do a lot of thinking in relation to that. Whether by hand or some of the machines, think about a skid steer, for example. Each scenario really does pose an opportunity for there to be safety risks that can be avoided or at least managed or mitigated. Kristin Hoffman supports farmers as a health and safety consultant with Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. Kristin, it's great to have you back on the program.
Thanks so much, Shaun. Great to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So I've sort of provided a really scientific term there, moving stuff. But when we're doing this activity, it would seem that moving items from one area to the next would be safe. But, that's a big but, the stats actually, if we look at some of the analytics of this, it tells a different story.
So true. Unfortunately, agriculture as a sector has one of the highest rates of injuries, and material handling is one of the factors that results in these injuries. Some of those most common incidents do involve equipment like the skid steer or tractor and forklift, but some injuries occur when removing material manually as well, by hand, essentially. And that poses some unique challenges for people and workers, especially in this sector. We do not necessarily handle perfect size or weight boxes with handles. We're moving livestock or bags of fertilizer, seed, or soil. And those can be a little more unruly for us to manage by hand or with equipment. So we need to be sure that we have effective and appropriate controls in place to avoid some of these negative consequences. We've had a few incidents in the last while that involve equipment in particular we hear more about. Some of those, an employee who was helping a group of workers move concrete blocks and it slipped and that worker was struck and killed. And some other incidents where even members of the family, the farmer operating the tractor has members of the family, including the little ones, in the loader bucket, and they've fallen out of that loader bucket and been critically injured or even killed. So absolutely consequences that we can manage and prevent.
Yeah, you provide some good examples there, or not good examples, but definitely examples to get the audience's attention for sure. Sticking with some of that manual sort of moving things and our the use of brute strength. And for a lot of farmers, they've spent a lot of time in their careers using physical strength to make stuff happen. Hey, we'll get out of the way. I'll do this. And like you said, a lot of stuff doesn't necessarily have appropriate handles, or it's not meant to be necessarily moved, or the design is not thought of to be moved by physical human strength. This form of material handling, it has risks that maybe like lower in severity, but higher in frequency. And when I think of some of the severities, I think of things like, geez, I hurt my back and things like that. Talk about some of the risks.
Yeah, absolutely. Even still, I think the oh, my back hurts is a sign of a hard and good day at work or on the farm. And that's untrue. We can accomplish most of our tasks without that need to be sore at the end of the day. It makes it tough to go to work or on the farm the next day. So absolutely, some of the risks are in the simple tasks like lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, or carrying some of these materials, even holding on to materials. Think about that example of livestock where we're pulling a calf or we're carrying chickens. Maybe we're even just holding that horse still while the vet is on farm for us. That takes a lot of demand out of our body to overcome some of those forces. In particular, those factors that lead to some of these injuries, the forces like those weights and pressures I just mentioned, as well, some of the time the posture that we have to work within. We're getting down low to look under equipment to perform our tasks, or we're reaching up high to turn on that beacon on the tractor. And certainly some of the tasks we do are over and over again. It doesn't give our body that opportunity for rest. And that combination or without that rest really is where we see the lead to these strains, sprains, or musculoskeletal disorders.
Yeah. Well, we're not working our way into, the exertion, right? We're not stretching. We're not, starting with lower weights. We're just like, hey, I'm going to move this boulder. That's, yeah, it can go badly. So, aches and pains, they come with the territory here, but these issues can have definitely a lasting impact. My grandfather, did one heavy lift at one time the wrong way, and man, he fought lower back pain the whole rest of his life. So what can we do to reduce some of the risks?
So I think that point of awareness is so important. For your grandfather, it was that one straw that, broke the camel, the farmer, or your grandfather's back. But really, there have been many exposures up to that point. We've worn and torn our body, and what might seem like that last bale that I'm lifting off of the wagon onto the elevator, and away my back goes. It wasn't just that one. There were so many exposures up to that point. So that awareness, truly for yourself, as well as those who might be your employees or family members, provide some awareness on those hazards. Do it right, know your limits, work within those limits every time. It might not be the first or the 10th time that we experience the back injury, but eventually it will sneak up on us. You know your body best. So again, acknowledge when it is under stress from material handling. Protect yourself from that stress by identifying where you might be able to use some communication, training, or information to better protect yourself and your employees. Livestock handling, using tools rather than your brute strength, safe lifting, the old statement of use your legs, not your back. There's truth to that. There's a few other parts we need to put in sequence, but really practice those strategies. You mentioned stretching as well before we move that boulder, literally or otherwise. Warm up. Farming and material handling in general is tough work. We warm up if we were to exercise. Let's treat this somewhat like exercise. Give yourself that moment to warm the body up. Prepare it to be successful rather than those aches and pains. And the best lift really is no lift at all. Can we use equipment? Is there a cart, dolly, or some other item that can help us lighten that load? And even better, is there something with power that can help us further lighten that load? Let's get the mechanical equipment involved and take that weight from us.
Hey, there's nothing more fun than running a forklift on the farm.
Forklift rodeo.
Exactly. Okay, so when we're talking larger loads, farmers will often use equipment at hand, like you said, but it poses a whole different kind of set of hazards, right? So this isn't alleviate the risk. So some of these risks are less frequent, but they can be more serious. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So simple for me to say, use the equipment that does control the manual risk, but we've introduced a new set. And to your point, the results can be that much more severe. So it's so important when we do introduce mechanical equipment, we're checking in and making sure that we've mitigated any of the now risks associated with material handling. So whether it's conveyors, lifting devices like cranes, the forklift, hopefully not for rodeo, but otherwise, skid steers, those front end loaders on tractors or backhoes. Check in, inspect, ensure that the hazards like moving parts, capacity, stability of those pieces of equipment, as well as the load, have been well managed.
Yeah. Using the right equipment to perform the proper task. That's kind of a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned about individuals who might be transported on equipment. And in particular, we do see from time to time the front end loader is used as a work platform or a transportation device. That's one example where we are not using equipment for its intended purpose. We want to be sure that we have the right equipment for the weight and size of material that we are going to handle, work within that capacity, and also check in on that condition, ensure we've got appropriate maintenance and when necessary, repair in place. And not only for that mechanical equipment, but consider your devices like cables, chains, and straps that we're going to use to secure the load. We want to ensure that we're within the working limits of those devices as well and not overload. Whatever the capacity is what that equipment and the devices have been designed to manage. If we're overloaded, we've got a risk for failure there. Communicate as well in the workplace. We have some real challenges when we're using mobile and mechanical equipment where we might interact with other people, coworkers or pedestrians on the property. Know where they are. We have huge equipment and very quickly people can get into our blind spots. Know where people are, set up some good communication signals with your employees and family members so that they don't find themselves in those hazardous points. And within the equipment itself, part of that check really is to be sure that you're visible. Have a look at your lights, the beacons, signage, decals, so that not only you know where the hazards are, but anyone who might be working within that area. And provide that information to those people who might be in the area, not only the person on the seat of the equipment.
So the last thing we're going to talk about is maybe less common for some farmers, but if you've got a warehouse, like I know I grew up in a seed farm, we had pallet racking to put away some seed bags and things like that. But we do have farmers that are moving materials into storage. Okay. And I want to touch on quickly here the safety precautions related to that.
Yeah, handling is only part of the story. It has to start and end somewhere. And as you suggested, racking, shelving, bins, silos, any of our bulk storage areas, as well as lofts and overhead storage areas where this material or load is going to start and end. In a similar way, we want to work within our limits, ensure that those structures are stable, that we understand the capacity, and of course, we understand the weight and size of our load, that it will fit within that capacity. And when we're considering storage, consider as well the devices like our containers, pallets, or totes that our material is going to be stored within onto that racking or loft. Ensure it's in good condition, not likely to allow the load to release unexpectedly. And check in on those posts, the cross members, all of the parts of these structures. Some of the time in congested areas, we might clip that post with the rear end of our forklift or the front end loader bucket of the skid steer. Check in where we see damage, report that, let's repair or replace that part. Structures like racking collapse quite suddenly, even with minor damage. So be sure we're checking in. It's going to hold up what we've put upon it.
Great stuff. Great advice. And, a lot of times we're doing some of these things every day. And so that's where we kind of drop our guard, right? And so it's important to have this reminder, and really appreciate, Kristin, you sharing some of your insights and great work there at WSPS. For more information, safety considerations around manual and mechanical material handling, I want you to go, everybody, to WSPS.ca/farm safety. There's a bunch of free, easy-to-use resources there for sure. So, Kristin, thanks a lot for joining us here today on the Farm Safety Roundup.
Thanks so much, Shaun.
With agricultural expertise to help keep farmers, their families, and their workers safe, Farm Safety Roundup is a podcast series produced by RealAgriculture with the team of ag specialists at Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. Go to the website WSPS.ca/farm safety. There you're going to find free health and safety resources, and you'll also be able to check this episode's show notes for information on the topics discussed. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time to talk all things farm safety right here on the Farm Safety Roundup.